Hello watch enthusiasts. Now today I'd like to talk about some dive watches below £500. Now I've been asked by several people to do a video on sort of budget dive watches, and £500 was about the maximum that these watches could be. So here's a list of several watches which I think are particularly good for the money and don't cost the earth. Now the first watch is the Orient Ray, but it's the Orient Ray 2. Now this is the new version of the watch, which was released recently, and still retains those classic looks that the original Ray had, and is still available in the blue and the black. However, it's lost that pusher at the 2 o'clock position, and now has a hacking and hand-winding movement. Now the movement in question is an in-house Orient 22 dual movement, and looks very similar to the movement in the previous generation of Rays. However, the rotor is now decorated and signed, which is a nice touch. Also, this movement is now hand-winding and hackable, making it a much more complete package as far as a sports watch goes. Now, this watch still comes on the big and sturdy 22mm bracelet which it was on originally, which is by no means a bad thing. I believe they haven't actually fitted solid end links to this watch, but I never had any problems with the original ones, and had very wide gaps, which allowed one to remove the bracelet extremely easily, while not actually having any play in it. In terms of the style of this watch, it is a very classic Submariner style of dial, with those round indices, and then the slightly more square ones at 6 and 9, while having a slightly triangular one at 12. A nice feature of this watch is the day-date complication, meaning that you can set it to have the day and the date. The bezel is also very classic, but fits in with the rest of the watch very nicely. So it does come in two colours. It comes in this beautiful sunburst blue, and I believe the dial has got slightly lighter on this generation, which really is a nice touch. This watch is also available in a fully black version, which also makes a very attractive piece if you want to go for a more subdued look on your dive watch, rather than a brighter, more summery sort of style. This watch is also water resistant to 200 meters, making it a proper diver with that unidirectional bezel. And the price for this whole watch is approximately £150, depending on where one looks. This second watch is also a product of Japan, and this is a slightly higher quality watch from Seiko. So this is their Prospex lineup, and the model from the Prospex lineup that I'm looking at today is the Sumo. This watch has become quite a classic among watch enthusiasts and dive watch enthusiasts. Personally, I prefer this watch to the SKX lineup, which has recently been discontinued. This watch is water resistant to 200 meters, like the Orient, but it has a slightly larger dial with that strong Seiko loom, meaning that it's very, very legible and very long lasting. Now, behind this very elegantly brushed caseback on this watch, there is an in-house Seiko movement which is hand-winding and hackable, meaning that it'll stop when you pull the crown out, thus allowing the synchronization of watches, meaning that it's more appropriate for diving, really, when several divers would want their watches completely in sync. Now, in my opinion, this watch has an extremely elegant shape, with large polished sides, but with brushed sections on the top of the lugs. And this does make the whole watch extremely elegant, and a very flowing design, which is interestingly quite reminiscent of its bigger brother, the Seiko Marine Master 300, which is an altogether more expensive watch, around the £1,500 mark, albeit that does have a grand Seiko movement and all sorts of features that this watch doesn't have. But it is nice to see that Seiko is echoing some of its design features of its high-end range in its lower-end pieces. Now, new, these watches cost about £350, but can be acquired for about £250 on the used market. So they do hold their value very well, but this is courtesy of the quality of these watches. And one part of this watch which really does reflect this is the bezel, which has a slight bevel at the towards the crystal, which I think really adds depth to the bezel and makes it look all the better. The next watch which I would suggest is the Squale 20 Atmos. Now this watch is, as the name would imply, water resistant to 200 meters, and has a very Submariner style dial and bezel, along with its case as well. So it is an homage, but a very well made one at that. Now this watch features an ETA movement, so it's 2824, which is a very well known and a well loved movement, which can be serviced by all watchmakers. So in terms of servicing, this watch shouldn't cost very much. Equally, this watch does pack a lot of features for its price. So, for example, it has a dive extension on its bracelet, solid end links, and a unidirectional bezel, which is 120 clicks and very high quality. This watch is also available in many options and versions. So, for example, there's the standard version here. Then there's a vintage style with some gold on the dial, and a number of other coloured versions of the dial, including green and burgundy ones, and also a vintage military one reminiscent of the Rolex Mil Sub. One version which is particularly interesting and different to other watches on the market is the all-black version. So this is a PVD version, which is entirely black, which really does differentiate it from other dive watches at this price point. Now these watches cost around £400 new, for which you do get a very high quality watch with a very good movement, which is of course Swiss, and which will last. Finally, I'd like to talk about the Glycine Combat Sub. Now this really is an icon in terms of divers, and has been used. It was used in the Vietnam War, I believe, by soldiers, and there it really did gain a reputation for build quality and resistance. These days, the Combat Sub comes in a variety of versions in different colours, with some with gold accents, some without, some in PVD black. So really, these are available in an absolute multitude of versions, but with two main dial types. There are some dials which have we have this style of dial with these straight hands and small circles and rectangles as indices with a 24-hour military time around them. There is also this version of dial which comes with the 12 hours around it, along with circle and straight hands. They're not actually Mercedes hands, because there isn't a Mercedes sign on the hour hand, it's just a circle. But this, personally, I don't like very much. I find it a bit clunky, whereas I find the other design to be much more elegant and simple. Now, the version of this watch I find the most attractive is the all-silver one, with the straight hands, which I think really does look very military in its design and extremely elegant. Now, inside these watches there is an ETA 2824, so these watches are going to be reliable and easy to service, which is always something nice in a dive watch, and a watch which is rugged. Equally, these watches are water resistant to 20 ATM, so that's 20 atmospheres or 200 meters, meaning they are perfectly fine for diving and swimming in general. Now, one nice feature about these watches is that while they're 42mm, rather than having very flat lugs, like for example I found on my Steinhardt, these have extremely curved lugs. They're curved to an extent which I haven't seen elsewhere, actually, meaning that they really hug the wrist and are comfortable on most wrist sizes. Now, these watches come in at about £500 for a good deal. They can cost more, but £500 is about the retail price. Anyway, I hope you liked the video. I hope it was informative and helpful. So if you did enjoy the video, please like, share and subscribe to get more content and see more content on my channel. So thank you very much for watching. This is Arm on the Watch Guy, over and out.